Welcome back. So we will continue the same topic, the remaining content, which was in the interprocess communication. So just a quick recap. IPC stands for interprocess communication, and in this IPC, we mentioned that there will be two types of communicating parties. One will be via the shared memory, another will be via the message passing. Then we proposed there will be two methods of sharing the devices. One we call it as message passing, another we are going to call it as shared memory. So this is the common area. This is the common area where we are going to have the message queue. So process 1 and process 2, they can use the message queue and one after the other. But here you can see that this is the shared memory here. So in this shared memory, process A is going to give an input here, and process B is going to use it, the shared memory, and similarly whatever proposed by the B, it is going to be taken by A. In this way, two processes, they can communicate with one another. So that is the shared memory model. So when we are going to call it a shared memory model, we mentioned that the shared memory is going to be of two parts. One, we are going to say process is independent and it doesn't communicate with one another. And second one, we mentioned that process is dependent. One process is dependent on another process. So these are the two ways of giving the mechanisms. So while doing this, should have some fixed buffer, nor we should have some variable buffer. So fixed buffer, we are going to call it as fixed size, and variable buffer, it can be up to the maximum size of the RAM. So that is what we talked. And we talked about a producer consumer problem. So in producer consumer problem, we had a shared data structure. So where we are giving the structure and we have having the size. So buffer size, we are going to define it as a struct item. Then we use two index values 0 and 1, and then we made a producer. He is going to produce the items. Producer, he will produce the item, that is nothing but the data. So until it reaches the maximum size of a buffer, you are going to input it. So the temporary storage location, you can feel this one as a buffer here. Later on, consumer is there. So consumer, he is going to consume the item. So again, the shared memory is going to be part of this buffer here, and via this buffer, consumer is going to consume. So that is regarding the shared memory we talked. So as far as interprocess communication is concerned, we are having only two primitives, one to send a message and another to receive a message. So we have a queue there, and via that queue, people is just going to communicate with one another. So now coming to the extensions of the interprocess communication, and which is part of a distributed network, which is part of a distributed network. So this distributed nature, we are going to call here as an remote procedure calls. So remote procedure calls stands for RPC. So now assume that there is a system here. In this system, the first part you are going to call here as a kernel. And in this kernel, operating system is going to stay. There is a second part of an operating system. Again, here you are going to call it as a kernel. So this one we are going to call it as source, and this one we are going to call it as destination. Nor we are going to call this one as a client, nor we are going to call here this one as a server. So in the user area, so this is where you are going to call it as an user area. So in this user area, people are going to dump their data. Assume we are having 10 and 20 or 10 and 15. Two variables are there. Now these two variables wants to reach to the destination. So I is equals to 10 and j is equals to, so this one I is equals to 10 and j is equals to 15, that has to be reached to the server. So that is the criteria. So now I and j, we are going to call it as an actual procedures, and these actual procedures has to be reached to the server. Now this is called as packing of parameters packing of parameters, and these parameters has to walk through the operating system. So this is where a stub is created, and from here to here data is moved. The data movement we are going to call here as marshalling. We are going to call this data movement as marshalling, and we are going to say it reaches to the operating system. Now operating system here, it does vice versa. You made a pack, now it is going to say unpack. That means you are going to get 10 and 20, that is for the value of I and j. That is for the value of I and j. So this part we are going to call it as client part. This part we are going to call it as server part. So where we are going to pack the parameters, we are going to call it as packing, and that is where a client stub is going to be created. So we get the parameters, via the parameters are going to be packed, and they are brought to the operating system. That is where we are going to say a stub is created. Now that stub is moved from source to destination. That stub is moved from source to destination. So stub is walking. So the high level term for walking, you are going to say if there is a military activity, so they say marshalling. So they do with some parade. So in this way, the data is going to be packed as a stub, and that stub is reached to the operating system kernel, and operating system kernel is going to throw that from one system, that is from a client system to the server system. It is feasible with a technique called here as marshalling. So here you can see the word called as marshalling. So again, if the client is going to pack the parameters, move it to the kernel where the operating system is there. Operating system is using the network, and then it is going to marshal the data there. So here you have packed the parameters 10, 15. Now you are going to unpack the parameters 10, 15. Now that entire event we are going to call it as remote procedure calls. So you are going to locate it one system, but still you are able to get the functionalities somewhere else. So that is where we are going to call it as remote procedure system. So for example, the right now the online things, whatever we are going to do, all are remote procedures. So people, if I have some laptop repair, if I want to install something, okay, tell me the IP address. So the person will give the IP address, the technician, he will sit somewhere else and he will use your laptop and he will fix the problem. That means he is going to have a remote access. And how is that remote access happens? It is going to have with the remote procedure calls. So you are not directly working on the system, you are working on the client system, and thereby you are going to get it. So that is get your functionalities done. So that is called as a remote procedure calls. So best example, you can see the AC or some other content. So you have a buttons on AC, but you don't operate the buttons on the AC. You are going to use a remote, and via that remote you are going to see. Similarly, on the TV also you are having some buttons. You can use that buttons, that is direct contact, but you are not using the direct contact buttons. You are going to use the indirect contact buttons. So that indirect contact buttons, those you are nothing but called as a remote ways of using the calls. So that is where we are going to have an example in Microsoft. So in Microsoft Windows, so those they are going to call it as MIDI, that is Microsoft Interface Definition Language. So Microsoft Interface Definition Language, MIDI, to communicate between client and to communicate between a server, it is totally using this remote procedure calls. Okay, the same diagram I have explained you here. So this is for the inter-process communication. After this inter-process communication is going to be done, now what we will do is we will look into this. We will look into the second aspect, that is the another concept what I have to mention. So that is threads here. So after inter-process communication, one more interesting topic in this unit 2, that is we will be having the thread. So when as you have an enough idea on Java, you are exposed to a word called as thread. Then we are telling that Java supports multi-threading. So those are all the concepts which are developed in the 4th generation. But before threads, operating system was born. So in the 2nd generation, in the 3rd generation itself, the threads has been there. The same thing has been overtook by the parties, that is the Java or all the object-oriented programming contents. Okay, so the general definition, we are going to say we have a thread, and that thread, it is two things. One, you call it as a user thread, another we are going to call it as a system thread here. So any program, if it has to be executed, then it is going to have some sub-contents. So those sub-contents, a part of a program, a part of a process, we are going to call here as a thread. So now when we use this word called as threads here, when we are going to use the word called as threads here, so threading, if it is towards a single core processor, nor if it is towards a single process, then it is going to have a single thread. So single thread itself, it is going to have the set of components. One, we are going to call it as code segment. Second, we call it as data segment. Third, we are going to call it as stack segment. And fourth, we are going to call it as heap. And next one, along with that thread, it is going to have some IO activity. For that IO activity, it is going to have the dumping of files. Similarly, it is going to have two registers which can be operated with the CPU. One, we are going to call it as a program counter, used to hold the address of the next location, and we are going to have this instruction register, and in this instruction register, it is going to hold what is the current executable instruction, so that it is going to be in this instruction register. So program counter, we discussed earlier, it is going to hold the address of the next instruction. Instruction register, it is going to use the content which is going to be used by the present one. So we are going to have this registers which are going to be the temporary storage area, where data can be brought from code, where data can be brought from data can be brought from code and data segments and files, everything they can be processed via these registers. Now coming to the multi-threading concept, we have the code segment, fine, we have the data segment, we have the files, and every thread, we can observe here, every thread is going to have its stack that is different, right? Every thread is going to have its own stack. Every set is going to have its own set of registers. So this is set 1, this is set 2, and this is set 3. So that distinction we must understand thoroughly. What is the difference between single threading and what is the difference between multi-threading? If that is a question there, so if it is a single thread, I have a single code segment, single data segment, single stack segment, and single set of registers for me. But if the same process is going to have multiple threads in it, if the same process is having multiple divisions in it, then every division, every thread is going to have its own set of registers, is going to have own set of registers, own set of stack, own set of registers, own set of stack for its execution. So that is the important distinction you should understand between single thread and the multi-thread. So if now we are going to say operating system is going to live in a area. So this area we are going to call it as system area. This area we are going to call it as system area. And second one, we are going to have the user programs. We are going to have the user programs, and these user programs, they live in an area called as user area. Okay, so one part is restricted to the users, another part is given to the operating system. The part where the operating system is going to have its existence, the part where the operating system is going to have its existence, so this part we are going to call it as kernel. So the part where the user is able to access his functionalities, then we are going to call that user area. So now you got the distinction. So we install Windows operating system, we will not work with any system files. right? Because that is totally left out for the operating system. So that is where the operating system is living. That is the area where the operating system has its system calls, etc. Those they are provoked there. Therefore, that area we are going to call kernel threads. So that area we are going to call it as kernel threads. So the communication to the operating system will be with system calls, and those system calls has to be executed. How are these executed? Yes, they are executed in form of threads. Which threads? They are executed in form of kernel mode threads. So I have addition program, I have multiplication program, division program, and subtraction program, and I have put a heading as arithmetic program. Now what is happening? So I can just write down here. So I have arithmetic operations. I have arithmetic operations. So now I'm going to write addition module, subtraction module, division module, and multiplication module. I'm going to have 4 things. Now what is happening? This one is thread 1. This one is thread 2. So multiplication is thread 3. Division is thread 4. Now all together, this one is going to be the main thread. So now this is going to be becoming the parent process or a parent thread, and this we are going to call them as child threads. So what is happening now? This entire scenario is going to be done in the user space. Therefore, those we are going to call it as user threads. Those we are going to call them as user threads. In the user area, people can write their own programs, and the location where the people are going to write the user programs, that is called as user area. Fine. We have primary memory. Primary memory is going to divide into one. It is going to have bootstrapping the operating system at that location, and rest of the area it is going to allocate to the user. So that is a known fact. Now user is going to dump his program there. Assume the program is arithmetic operations. Then that program we are going to call it as main thread. Now arithmetic operations, obviously you write 4 programs, 4 sub-functions, right? Addition, multiplication, division, subtraction. Now we assume everything is a separate module and everything can be executed concurrently, parallelly. So how is it going to happen? Then every module is going to be having a separate thread. Then I am going to call it as a separate thread. It is going to have its stack. It is going to have its registers. But the data segment, the code segment is common. The files, the data segment and code segment is going to be the common element at that case. Ready? So now we discussed about threads. So threads are of 2 types. One, the user, he can write his own programs there to execute. That is called as user mode threads. And second, operating system will do the system calls in system area. That is nothing but the kernel threads. Now you got the distinction. Now, when user is going to have his threads, he is going to make some hierarchies. He is going to make them hierarchies. So now how are these hierarchies made? So you have things with many to one, one to many, one to one. So those relations are there that we will be discussing. So now you can see the examples here. Kernel threads are there. So some of the examples of kernel threads, you can see it can be via Windows, it can be via Solaris operating system, Linux operating system, Mac and Unix operating system. Similarly, threads can happen with an examples in Windows, in the Java APIs, nor the portable operating system for Unix. So that we are going to call it here as POSIX or pthreads. So the next concept, multi-threading. The next concept was multi-threading. So recapping of the single thread, I have code segment, I have data segment, I have files, I have registers, and I have stack. And this is going to execute a single program. This it is going to use a single program. Then what is multi-threading? I have code segment, I have data segment, I have files, then I have register set 1, register set 2, register set 3. Then I am going to have my stack 1, stack 2 and stack 3, and everything is going to have its own thread. So now assume we are going to have some register 4, stack 4. So I am having addition module, I have subtraction module, multiplication module and division module. So this entire thing, I'm going to call it as user thread. So this one, it is going to be done in a user mode. So this is subthread 1, this is subthread 2, this is subthread 3 and subthread 4. Now you can understand how a multi-threading goes. So which model operating system will give? Okay. Now the requirement you have given, right? My requirement is to do the arithmetic program. So addition, multiplication, division, subtraction. So I am writing 4 modules. Now what operating system will think? Which model of multi-threading it can give? It can go either for 1-to-1, that is if it is going to be a uniprocessor, nor it can go with many-to-one. As there are multiple threads here, it can go with many-to-many. But if there are lot of CPUs available, that means if I am going to have some core processors, assume I am going to have quad core processor. Now what is happening? So quad core in sense, I am going to have 4 cores here, 4 cores here. So in first core it executes addition, second core it executes division, third core it executes multiplication, and fourth core it will execute subtraction. So first, second, third, four threads are there. Then you are going to call here as a many-to-many operation, right? So in this way, multi-threading is going to take place. So now let us look into the first scenario of multi-threading. Let us look into the first scenario of multi-threading. So you can see here, many user level threads are mapped to a single kernel thread. Many user levels threads are mapped to a single thread. Okay, now again, recapping of the old diagram. I have a primary memory, and this primary memory is going to have the first part called as operating system. The second part, it is going to have the user programs. This is the basics. So user program, you are going to call it as user thread. System program, you are going to call it as kernel thread. So now you are going to write your program. This program has to be passed to the operating system. Now at this position you are stuck. That means kernel threads has to communicate with the system threads to get their process executed. Okay, kernel thread has to be communicated to the system threads for their jobs to be done. I want my C program to be executed. I write my C program in my IDE, in my editor. That has to be executed. That program has to be sent to the system. Where I write my program? User. My program is called as user thread. Your thread has to be converted for processing to the system thread. So you need a lot of manipulations there. So that is where a system thread, the user threads are thrown towards the kernel mapping. Now you can see here, you can see the architecture here. So I have 4 threads here. So this is independent thread, this is independent thread, this is independent thread, and here you are going to have bottleneck situation. You are going to have the bottleneck situation. So what is bottleneck situation? I have thread 1, thread 2, thread 3, but it is you are going to have only one way. You are going to have only one way to link to the kernel mode, not to link to the kernel thread. My way of approach, yes, I can execute my process concurrently, parallelly, simultaneously. So all the 4 threads, they are executing parallel. All the 4 threads, they are executing parallel. But here, when it reached here, they have to go only with a serial aspect. They have to go with a serial aspect, and that relationship we are going to call here as many to one. That relationship we are going to call here as many to one. So in multi-threadings, you can read the definition. So these are going to be implemented on the course. Next one. Next one, we are going to have this one-to-one threading. One-to-one threading. Okay, I have my swap program. I have my Fibonacci series. I have my prime, and I have my Armstrong number. So every program, it will be directly assigned to the thread. One-to-one relation. There is no competition for you. So all the kernel threads are open to you. So every process is going to choose a kernel, and thereby they are going to get its job executed. There is a direct mapping between one user thread. There is a direct mapping from one user thread to the kernel thread. So such type of mapping we are going to call here as a one-to-one mapping. So user level people, they are going to write their programs, and their programs, they are going to be sent to the kernel. That is done with system calls, and inside the system calls, how the things are going to be done, it is going to be done in process of threads. So the next one we can see here. The next one we can see here. So that is many-to-many model. That is many-to-many model. So when we are going to say it as a many-to-many model, I have lot of user threads. I have lot of user threads here, and there are lot of kernel threads. And now here the operating system is going to map the request. So whatever request it is going to see, that request it is going to map it to the kernel. It need not be that the process from this thread has to be mapped only to the kernel. If it is idle, if the kernel is idle, immediately the program is going to be mapped here. So the mapping, it is going to be done internal content with the operating system, and see, it is going to be implemented in one of an example called as Solaris. And in Windows operating system, it is going to be done with a package called as Threadfiber. So using this, the mapping between the user threads is going to be with the kernel threads. So many-to-many, we have multiple user programs, and those multiple user programs, they are going to be mapped to the kernels. So that is regarding the multi-level. Now a small change here you can observe, very little change. So this is one level and this is another level. So what it is going to do? So what is this relation? One can unmute yourself and tell me the answer. What is this relation, please? Is it many to many, many to one, or one to many? What is this diagram?
To one.
This one, first one. What is this diagram?
Many to many. Many
So this
to
one,
many.
this is many to many. What is the second diagram?
One to one.
One to one. Yeah, fine. Thank you. So now you can observe that threads is going to support three models. One, it is going to do one-to-one. Another, it is going to do one-to-many. Another, it is going to support many-to-many. Now, what is the definition of low-level model? The diagram itself is speaking. The diagram itself is speaking. It is going to make a hybrid approach, right? It is going to make a hybrid approach. What is that hybrid approach? It is mixing the two thread concepts. What are the two thread concepts it is mixing? It is mixing many-to-many model, and it is mixing one-to-one model. And what are the examples of two-level models? The example of operating systems which are using two-level models are IRIX, HPUX, and Unix with 64, and Solaris. So these are some of the examples which are going to mimic the many-to-many concept and one-to-one concept. So that is regarding the two-level model. Fine. So coming to the multi-level server architecture, yeah, this is the Java-based content. So we will be having the MVC architecture, model view container. So right now you are having only Java. Probably in the next semester you will be having advanced Java. So there they will be teaching you the model view container. So when we are going to see this model view container, we will be having an exposure towards client and server architectures. Client server architecture, it will be one single tier. It is called as a single tier. Another, it is will be called it as multi-tier. When it is going to be multi-tier, it can be two tier, nor it can be three or more tiers. It can be three or more tiers. So what is two or more tiers means? One location it is going to have the client programming. Another location it is going to have the server programming. So one location it is going to have the client, and another location it is going to have the server. And this server, it is going to divide two way of things. One, it is going to have the application server. It has the application server, and the second way, it will be having the database server. Another, it will be having the data. Yes, sir. Yeah. Got it, sir. I will just pause my presentation.
Okay. Sir, please allow the sharing also.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sir, my sharing mode is stopped. You can share your things, sir. My sharing mode is stopped.
Okay. See, it is not enabled.
1 second, sir. I'll make you a presenter. Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. So, good morning, all the students.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Sir, Ramchandra sir, the screen share.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Third CSC students, the following students. Yeah.
Okay. The students, this is regarding the fee payment. Okay. So actually, there are different types of students, okay? And some of you got admission through convener quota. Again, two categories: fee reimbursement and non-fee reimbursement. And this 99,850 is only for the non-fee reimbursement students. So those who got the fee reimbursement facility, their fee is only 4,850. See, please check your numbers. Those who have to pay 99,850, this is only for non-fee reimbursement students. Please check your numbers and note your number and fee amount also. That is reach numbers 1, 2, 5, 7, 10, 11, 13, 15, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 42, 43, 45, 46, 47, 48, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 58, 63, 66, 68, 70, 71, 72, 73, 76, 77, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 88,